Chess has what is called its own vocabulary. How many of you know the word vocabulary? What it means? Very good. Vocabulary is all of the words that you know. Chess has its own vocabulary. Just like in cookies, there's ginger cookies, fig cookies, chocolate chip cookies, my favorite.
And words.
And words. So chess has its own vocabulary. So for me to spill what's in my mind into your mind, I use words. I'll show you what I mean, but I also try to be very specific. I like to use a chess vocabulary. One of the best vocabularies in chess is what we call the algebraic system. And what this means, algebraic system. I'm not even sure where the word comes from. The algebraic system, what it also does, it gives us a very, very specific address for every square. So this square, we understand to be A1, correct? A1. This square, this is the A file. This square we understand to be A2, A3,
C3, E4,
you guys are getting better.
D7, A5, F8.
Very good, very good. So when we start to use algebraic, we start to be very specific. If I move my knight, what square is that?
G1, F3,
F3, to knight G1, F3. So I just moved my knight to F3. And what squares does the knight attack?
H4, H4,
Correct.
G5, G1, E5, D4, and D2, and E2, E1, and G1.
The knight controls 8 squares. When I went knight G1 to F3, it now controls 8 squares. Let's go back to the starting position. From here, don't call it out, just think about it for a moment. How many squares does the knight attack?
4.
4. That's amazing. Is it true? Which squares?
That one, that one, that one.
That's 4, right?
Oh wait, that one. 3.
Very good. That was 3. So, we start to understand that when we bring our pieces off the back rank, these are the back ranks, our pieces start to control more squares. Okay, this is a very, very, very important aspect of chess. The more squares my pieces control, the less squares your pieces control, the more opportunities I'm going to have to make good moves. Now, we all know what this is.
King, queen.
Very good. So in chess, we say that sorry, we say that the chessboard is our battlefield. And we divide the battlefield into certain sectors. For example, we say that I have my space, you have your space. My space, we say that the chessboard has 64 squares, correct? Okay, so we're going to draw an imaginary line across the middle of the board. We can call this the equator if we like. It's an imaginary line. But we say that these 32 squares are whites. They belong to white. These 32 squares, they all belong to black. But then we divide the board into more sectors. Okay, we notice that the king is on the E1 square and the queen is on the D1 square. We draw a square, okay? we draw a square of 16 squares, and we say from E1 to H1 to H4 to E4 back to E1. Do you all see the square?
Yes.
That's White's Kingside.
Is there 4 squares?
4 or 16?
4. 16.
So you count all of these squares. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Oh, I meant like the big squares that you're like that.
Yeah?
You're making this 4.
Correct. There's 4 squares. This is White's Kingside. This is Black's Kingside, correct? Now, notice the queen is on D1. We're going to draw a square from D1 to D4 to A4 to A1 to D1. And we call this White's queenside, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, why is this important? Imagine that you and I are in a restaurant together and we don't have a chess set. But let's say we're having a conversation where I said, "How did you do?" And you said, "I won." How did you win? I checkmated my opponent on the queen side. So even though I don't even have the game score in my hand, you've already conveyed to me an idea. The next thing we say is that there is what we call the center. There are 2 central files. Anybody could guess what they are? Yes, young man.
E5 and the E5.
Correct. These are the center files. And that makes a great deal of sense. Why? Because they're in the center of the board. Now, chess grandmasters refer to 4 squares. 4 squares, and they're called the sweet center. The sweet center. Those are the 4 squares that ultimately we try to control in the opening and the middle game. Why? Because when we control the sweet center, do any of you play tennis? Oh, you're good. Are you a good tennis player?
Yeah.
I'm not so good, but I like to play tennis. And I like it when I hit the ball with the sweet center of my racket. I hit the ball directly with the strongest part of my racket. Well, that's what the chessboard is, our battlefield, and we're trying to control the sweet center. So I'm going to do today something very, very different. I'm going to play a game of chess against the entire class. Okay? But what I'm going to do is very special. I'm going to tell you why I'm making the moves I'm making, right? You don't have to tell me your secrets, but I'll tell you mine. Okay. So, first of all, the class is going to be white. Yay. I got to give you guys a little edge, right? I'm going to give you a little edge. And how many of you would like to play this as your opening move? That's pretty good. How many of you would like to play this one as your opening move? That's pretty good. How many of you have a different opening move that you would like to play? Okay. The E4, the E4 crowd won. Okay. This is a very good opening move. There are many, many good opening moves. This is one of the most popular. Bobby Fischer said, E2, E4, best by test. That was how he described this move. Let's think about this move for a moment, and why is it so good? First of all, you control 2 squares, right? What squares are they? Yes, young lady.
E5 and F5.
Precisely, precisely. See, that's how cool chess can be. You can be very specific. D5 and F5. One of the other advantages of this opening move that you've just made is you've opened up the diagonal for your bishop, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And you've opened up the diagonal for your queen, correct. When you started the game, notice that the bishop and the queen could not move. With this opening move, you freed the bishop. Now, I have my space, you have your space. How many of my spaces, it's a trick question, by the way, how many of my spaces in my sector of the board, my space. With this move, how many of my squares do you control? Young man.
2.
What's your answer?
2. 3.
What's your answer?
0. 2.
Now, for those of you who said 2, you know the young lady has already said 2, but that's at least 2, because this bishop controls how many of my squares? Young man, how many? 1. Does it control this square?
No, I thought you were talking about the middle.
Oh, I meant the bishop. So how many of my squares does that bishop? 6 of my space, 2. So hold on. We have 2 plus 2 equals?
4.
None of you got the answer right, and that's not even the right answer.
5.
Correct. It's 5. Why is it 5, young lady?
Queen can go up to there. Yeah.
H5. So with that opening move, you control 5 of my spaces. Now, what I like to do when I was young, and I still do it today, is I like to build a fortress. Okay, what do I mean when I build a fortress? First of all, we all know that checkmate ends the game, right?
Yeah.
So I want the safest king I can possibly have. So I like to build a fortress. I'm going to play here, and I'll show you how I build a fortress. With this move, how many squares of yours do I control?
3.
3? You guys have eyes I don't have. I recognize that my bishop controls 2. This pawn, no, this pawn doesn't control any of your squares. My queen, it's only 2. Okay, your turn. Yes, young man, what would you like to do?
Queen H5.
How many of you would like to play queen to H5? Raise your hands. You like to play queen H5?
Yeah.
You like to would you like to play queen H5? Okay.
I do.
You do too? Excellent, excellent. Okay, now I'm going to share with you what the queen on H5 does, because probably many of you know the idea of bringing your bishop, and then with your bishop here and your queen here, you're going to have a direct attack. But when I was a beginner, I loved my queen. It was the cat's meow. When I lost my queen, I was so forlorn. How many of you know the word forlorn? How about if I said sad? I was so sad when I lost my queen. Okay, so I like to develop my queen early, but this is actually a beginner's mistake. Why? Because the queen's so powerful. Whenever I attack your queen, you're going to have to move her, right? Yeah. Young man, what would you like to say?
Even if you did,
Attack your queen?
no, even if we did get you in check at that area, yeah.
Yeah?
You could just move your king to where your pawn was.
That's true, that's true. But I'm not even going to give you the chance to get to that area, also called F7. And young man,
You to take the queen.
correct. See, when I attack your queen, because it's so powerful, I'm usually going to attack it with something less powerful. So you're going to have to move your queen. So I'm going to bring my knight to F6.
Oh no!
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is called,
Yay.
do you know what this is called in chess? No, that's an attack. This is an attack against your queen. But it's also, and pawn, correct. It is a fork, actually, correct. I am attacking your queen. It's a double attack. A fork is a double attack. But it's also called gaining a tempo. Gaining a tempo. What do I mean by that? When it's my turn to move, I'm on turn, right? I make a move, it means I used a tempo. But when I brought my knight out, I attacked your queen, and I'm going to force you to move the queen. The class, what would you like? Where would you like to move your queen? Yes, young man. Come on.
Queen A5?
Queen A5, that's a square. Young man, what? B5, that's check. Ooh, how many of you like to play queen to B5, check? Excellent.
No.
No.
You attack us again. No.
You would like to play, oh, that's,
I
I
have
think.
another idea. I have another idea.
What's that?
The bishop to B5.
Okay, so we've got two candidate moves. Okay, do you know what the word candidate means?
No.
No. Yes, young man.
I think that means that two pieces control the checkmate to the king. Oh yeah, you need
Well,
to do it.
a candidate is kind of like an option. You have an option. But you have lots of options. You could move your knight, you could move your pawn, but your queen is attacked. So one suggestion was to go check.
You can still attack us with your pawn.
Correct. That's what I'm going to do.
If you're attacking with something but not a knight, then you can block the attack.
Correct. And the other option was to play bishop. So you could check me with your bishop or your queen. How many would like to check me with their bishop? How many would like to check me with the queen? Ooh, that's a tough call. Let's try it again. With the bishop? That's a lot of hands. With the queen? Less hands. We're going to let you guys play bishop. Correct. It's a bad move. Why?
Because the knight's still attacking the queen.
That's right. After I block the check, your queen is still going to be attacked. Now, I'm going to block the check with my pawn because I'm very clever. Now I'm attacking two pieces. I'm attacking your bishop and I'm attacking your queen. Yes, young man.
Bishop takes pawn on kind of like a double attack.
Well, if you take my pawn on c6, you win a pawn. But then I recapture your bishop, and who got the better deal? We're negotiating. Yay! Why?
Because another move now will pin you by going queen b5.
Okay.
Bishop's worth more.
Correct, because a bishop is worth 3 pawns. Okay. Ooh. So I did a real nice trade. I like you people. You're my favorite people. Now, your queen is attacked. Where would you like to move your queen? Would you like to bring it here to put me in a pin? How many would like to do that? Wow, that's exciting. How many of you would like to retreat with your queen? Very calm, safe.
I have another idea.
Another idea. What's another good idea?
Wait.
Now don't forget, I'm also attacking your queen and pawn. Yes, young man.
But after we come here and you move your pawn to b6, we'll force you. But after we take the knight.
Okay, so you're suggesting that when you bring your queen to this square, this pawn protects my knight. If I move my pawn, you're going to capture my knight, right? Well, thank you for sharing that. That means I'm not going to move my pawn. I don't want to lose my knight. Okay.
No, and then I'll force you. There's another move you could have done.
Another move you could. Which one is that?
You could have moved your queen to f7.
Okay, queen to f7. You mean to capture the pawn with check? Okay. Could I take your queen?
Yes. Yes.
Would you like to lose your queen?
No.
Oh, no. Okay, we're going to let you play this move, and under normal conditions, I would capture your pawn very happily. But I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what I like to do, which is to build a fortress. I play the move g7, g6. So what's the idea? Does anybody know what the idea behind this move is? Yes, young man.
Leave your king when somebody checks it.
Yes,
Space to go.
that's correct. But what this move does, it prepares my fortress. What I want to do in the 16th century, how many know what the 16th century means? Yes. In the 16th century, the best chess players in the world were Italian. They all came from Italy. And they created what they called the fianchetto. So when I put my bishop on the long diagonal, that's called a fianchetto. So I play g6 with the idea of fianchettoing my bishop. Go ahead, your turn. What would you like to do? Would you like to develop your knights? Would you like to defend your pawn? Would you like to take my pawn? No. You like to take my pawn? But I will take your queen. No. Okay. So, how many would like to develop their knight? That's a good. How many of you would like to push your pawn forward? Would you like to do that? Okay. How many of you would like to develop this knight?
Yes.
Yes, okay, that's a solid majority. We're going to go with the solid majority. Now after knight f3, I play bishop g7.
Castle.
Okay. So I create my fianchetto. Now how many of you would like to castle? That is a very, very good move. Now, I'll just tell you a quick story. Castling is very, very good because it brings your king into safety, correct?
Yes.
Yes. I had a very good friend. He passed away, I'm sad to say. His name was Edward Gufeld. And he was a chess grandmaster from the old Soviet Union. And he was the trainer of the Soviet women's Olympic team. Yes? And he was very nervous about his team, how they were going to perform, because there was a great deal of pressure for the women to win the gold medals. So he would come to the games late, and as he would enter the playing hall, he would look for a Soviet person and ask them in Russian, how are our women doing? And usually the answer was they were doing fine. And then he would ask the next question, have they all castled? And if the answer was no, then he would say, he'd shake his head very sadly and say, we have to train harder. So castling is very good, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to castle. Okay, now let's compare for just a moment. You've castled, and I've castled. But I've done what is called building a fortress. Why? In front of my king stands the bishop, nicely protecting. Besides my king stands my rook, nicely protecting. And besides that, I have a knight, like a sentry, a good guard, and I have a beautiful pawn shield in front of my king. Compare. You castled, you're safe, your rook is next, your knight is, and all your pawns are safe. So you have a good pawn shield, I have a good pawn shield. The young man made an interesting observation, though. Also, by my fianchettoing, if we take away my bishop for a moment, my king also has a square. At the moment, you're vulnerable to back rank checkmates. How many of you know what a back rank checkmate is? Very good. You guys should be teaching this class. What am I doing? Okay, now it's your turn. And keep in mind, the opening has not gone very well, I'm sorry to say. I'm a pawn, I have a bishop for a pawn. Your turn. How many of you would like to develop this knight? Raise your hands. How many of you would like to advance your pawn so you could... Yes. How many would you like to make another move, a different one? What's a different move for you?
Rook e1.
Rook e1 is an excellent move. You're defending the pawn that I am attacking. You've already castled, so you've already brought your rook into play, so it will cost you a tempo. You'll be moving the same piece twice if you move your rook. How many of you would like to move with your knight again? Okay. How many of you like to move with your pawn? Okay. So if I make this move, does that have your support? Yes? Okay. Now, in this moment, remember what I said about your queen and how powerful it was? If I attack your queen, I'm developing my pawn, correct? I'm moving my pawn from its original position. So I'm developing my pawn, but I'm doing it with a gain of tempo because I'm going to force you to move your queen. Okay, so now your queen is attacked. If you don't move your queen, that's for me. So where would you like to move your queen? Think about it for just a moment. In the back, young man, where would you like to move the queen?
Queen to B3.
Queen to, so you would like to retreat your queen to this safe square, correct?
Because it's attacking that pawn, it's attacking one of the pawns. And it's also queen. And it's even
Okay.
no, it's
Okay.
It's attacking a pawn and it's doing a fork. And it's doing a pin.
Okay. So I think a lot of you would like to move queen to b3. That's a good move, right? Yes. Yes. Now, let's say, you guys have me under some worries here a bit. I'm a little bit concerned. What am I going to... No. Okay. I see that your queen is attacking my pawn. Correct? Correct? So I'm going to move my knight. So my knight protects the pawn and attacks your queen. Ooh. Yes, young man. What would you like to do? Okay, exactly. My knight's attacking your queen. You don't move your queen. That's for me. That's for me. So, how many of you would like to move the queen to c3? Raise your hands. Very good.
No.
How many of you would like to take my pawn? Yes. But I would take your queen. Oh. So, okay, I see the move queen c3 is popular with my audience. You do? What's another move?
Because if you just move the knight, then it's again attacking it. So you should move it to A3.
Okay, the gentleman is making a very good point. If you had moved your queen to c3, just think about it for just a second, Remember when I fianchettoed my bishop on the long diagonal? Do you remember that? It's still there. Now, if I were to move this knight, the bishop would have what is called a discovered attack against your queen.
Oh.
Yeah. You see, this bishop is actually in ambush, is waiting in ambush, and I would capture your pawn, attacking your queen with my knight, attacking your queen with my bishop. And also notice that, did I leave this knight in capture? Why? Why, young lady? Correct. That is correct. Yes, young man.
This means also discovered double attack.
Correct. You remember when I started the lecture and I said how important words are in chess and how you can be very, very specific. The young man made a very, very specific observation. It's a double attack, a discovered double attack. That's correct. So imagine, remember we were having a meal together and you were telling me about your game and how you got checkmated on the king side or how you got checkmated on the queen side. At this moment, you could say, after knight takes pawn, you lost a pawn to a discovered double attack, and I know exactly what you were talking about. Okay. So here's a very good time to take your move back. And I'll go with what the young man said. If you had played here, I would have won a pawn for free. So how about queen to a3?
You're still going to get the pawn for free.
Why? Could you capture? Now, if you notice what has happened in the game, how many, I want to say units, how many pieces and pawns have I moved? How many pieces and pawns? Let us count. 1,
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Now, how many have you moved?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Okay, so we say in 6. So we say in chess that I'm ahead in development. What does that mean? It means I've moved more of my army. I've got more of my army into the game than you have. I'm ahead in development, and I'm also ahead. What is this called? Yes, young man. Young man. What is it? Yes? In the back.
You're also ahead in points.
Correct, but we call it force. I'm ahead in force, or I'm ahead in material, right? So a couple of things have already happened from this opening. I'm ahead in force, I'm ahead in development, and I have a very safe king. So at this moment, I'm a big favorite. I'm a big favorite to win the game. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue to develop. So now I bring a bishop into play. Yes, young man.
Bishop G5.
Bishop G5. So because I brought a bishop into play, you brought a bishop into play, right? That was how you thought about it? Okay, that's very logical.
But now it's 9, 7.
Right.
Still ahead.
It's very interesting what you just did. You did it subconsciously, but it's what I do as well. I keep a running count. Do many of you know who Mr. Spock is? Oh, he was an actor. Yes, do you know Mr. Spock? Well, Mr. Spock was a very, very logical person. And he often counted time. Like the captain of the ship would ask Mr. Spock what time it is, and he'd give him the exact time without looking at a watch, because he was making a calculation of the time constantly. That's what I do. I constantly count who's ahead in the force. I constantly count who's ahead in the development, and I also count who's ahead in space. Shall we do that for a moment? Without answering right away, how many squares does white control? Think about it, don't answer it right away. And how many squares does black control? I'm going to ask you in a moment. Okay, count how many squares you guys control, how many squares I control. Okay, are you ready? No. Not yet? Okay. You're ready. Okay, we got one person ready. He's ready to go. You're ready. Okay, just a second. Okay, so I'm going to ask. White controls 2 squares. How many believe it's 2? Raise their hand. How about 3? How about 5? How about more than 5? Raise your hand if it's more than 5. Okay, shall we do it together? This pawn, how many?
2.
This pawn?
2.
0. This pawn doesn't attack any of my space, so we have 2. This knight, that makes 4, right? The knight controls e5 and g5, that's 4. So 2, 4, and the bishop? 6.
7, 8, 9.
9. You guys control 9. How many does black? That's me, the good guy. How many does the good guy control?
You're a bitch.
I control, how many did you say? More than 4. More than 4.
Can I? That fast.
One? One? How many squares does this knight control?
3. 3.
Of your space, how many does it control?
2.
How many does this pawn control?
9.
How about this knight?
1, 2, 2.
So we're up to 4. How about this bishop?
1, 2, 3. 3.
3?
Because the bishop's on a square too.
Ah, that's a very good point. The bishop is on the g4 square, but how many squares does the bishop attack? The bishop attacks h3 and f3, but we don't say the bishop attacks the square it's on. Okay? So this is very interesting. So it actually turns out that I control 2, 4, 6. Now, I'm going to take your knight. We're going to play a couple of more moves and then we'll stop. I take your knight. Do you guys want to move your king?
No.
You want to move a rook?
No.
How about your queen?
No.
Do you want to take my bishop?
Yes.
Oh!
Pawn! Pawn! No. Pawn! No. Yeah! Yeah! Yeah!
That was a good trade. You guys did good for a change. You trade, how much is the knight worth?
3.2.
Now we've got a mathematician in the class, an accountant, an economist. Okay, this is a very, very fundamental thing we're going to talk about now. Are you aware of what means doubled pawns? We can see the double pawns. The pawn on f3 and the pawn on f2 are on the same file. So we say that white has doubled f pawns. Very, very clear. And because you have doubled f pawns, do you see that your king, it's a little bit weakened? Okay. So what I'm going to do is, I'm very happy that your queen is over here, but I don't like the fact that my knight isn't doing so much. So I'm going to bring my knight back with the idea of bringing it here, and I want to attack your double f pawn. Do you see how I'm doing that? And now what would you...
Go right here.
What could you do?
Go right here.
I would love to go right here, attacking your queen, but I'm afraid you would take my knight.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, you were trying to trick me. Tricky. Now, that would be my move, but the young gentleman had a different idea for me as well. Okay? What he suggested I might do is I might take your pawn.
And we'll take your knight.
And then when you take my knight, with the double pawn. That's very good because you wanted to undouble your pawn. Now what would you suggest?
I said you take our pawn on b2.
Correct. With the bishop attacking your queen and winning the rook, except for one small tiny detail. What's that detail? Yes? Queen will take my bishop. Well, that's a lousy idea. I would lose a bishop and a knight. Yeah, thank you very much indeed. Well, I'm not going to fall for that. Oh, ho, 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 ho. Not one chance. I'm going to retreat my knight. Okay, you guys are good. Yes, young man, what would you do? Okay. Bishop takes f6. Would you like to make the trade? It's an even trade, even Stevens.
No, it's not.
Why?
I'm not going to do it.
It's 3 and 3.
No, you can take with those, one of those.
Okay, but it's still an even trade.
But you can still take.
Okay.
Two squares.
Ah. The gentleman suggests, okay, let's just look at this for a moment. The bishop on g5 controls 2 squares, correct?
Yeah.
f6 and h6. When your bishop takes my knight and I recapture your bishop, how many squares does your bishop now control?
None.
It's gone. It's gone. There's no more control.
Bishops left.
Correct. But let's go back for a moment. In this moment, how many squares of yours does my bishop control?
10.
What?
Five.
5? Think about it. Think about it. Let me repeat my question. No. How many squares of yours does this bishop control?
2.
It doesn't. Well, what square does it attack?
That one.
Why? It's blocked by the knight.
That one.
But that's my square. It's not your square. This is my space. This is your space. Sit down. You can go back.
1. 0.
Why? Show me what bishop.
0.
Okay, just a second. This bishop attacks this square, correct? Yes, but that's my square. It's not your square. This bishop attacks f8, correct?
Yes, but there's something on it. Your square.
Protects 8.
Square. Your square.
So it doesn't attack any of your squares. Now, let's just imagine that you take my knight. I recapture with the bishop. Now, hold on, just a second. We've made an even trade, but how many squares does your bishop now control?
0.
Now, after the trade, how many of your squares does my bishop now control?
3.
How many think it's 2? Raise your hands. That's wrong. How many think it's 3? Raise your hands. How many think it's, now this is tricky, 4?
Oh, I think it is.
Why is it 4? Why is it 4?
Even attacking the h4 square.
It attacks h4, d4, c3, b2. So it attacks 4 squares. So you really helped me with this trade. Do you see that now?
Yeah, but we never. And there's also something good for us. We broke your fortress.
That's true. That is a consideration. But you broke my fortress, but you have to weigh it about, chess is a little bit about negotiation, right? You get me, I get you, but you also have to think about the result. The result. We should realize that as we calculate the force, the time, the element of space, that trade actually favors me, because you're getting rid of an active bishop and you're developing a passive bishop on an active diagonal. How many of you know the word passive? Passive. Young man, what do you think passive means? Peaceful. That's a nice word, isn't it? So my bishop at the moment is a peaceful bishop, and then it's going to become an active bishop. So how many of you would, after this long discussion, how many of you would now like to trade your bishop for the knight? Well, we learned something. So we're going to make a different move. How many of you would like to move your knight? Yes. Bring your pieces out. Where would you like to move your knight? To d2 or to c3? Young lady. c3. Okay. Now, after knight c3, I have a really, really, really good move. And I want you guys to try to imagine what I would like to play if I were black. Which I am black. So what's a really good move? What's a move that you guys got to worry about now? Young man?
Knight. Your knight to g4, because then the bishop will be attacking our knight.
But if I move my knight to g4, can't you take my knight? But you win my knight. That's not good for me.
But you only be getting 1 point.
But Who? Somebody came up with a real good move just a moment ago. Not that knight move, but another knight move. What's another good
D3.
So this knight on c6 controls how many squares?
2.
D4 and B4. Where could this knight move? It can only move to the square it controls. If it goes to B4, is that a good move?
No.
Okay, so what's the other good square? Yes?
D4.
Okay, correct. Knight D4. Now, after I've moved my knight to D4, what have I done? I made a fork, correct? I'm attacking 2 pawns, correct? Which pawns am I attacking?
And I know the one who will take C2 pawn.
Because if I capture this pawn, my knight will attack your queen and rook, correct? What's the other pawn that I'm attacking, though?
The F3 pawn.
And if I take that pawn, what will my knight be forking in that case?
King. Forking my king and bishop.
Correct. I'm forking. So in this position, this knight is about to cause some very serious damage. You're going to lose either this pawn with a result that you'll lose either the queen or rook, or you're going to lose this pawn, which will attack your king with check.
I know you. I think you're going to do that.
Okay, so this point we're going to stop and we're going to say you guys came really, really, really close to almost winning.
About that phone.
Really, 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 really close. But what we learned is what was I trying to do against the class? What was I trying to do? I was trying to develop my army. I was trying to control this. Look what happened in the end, by the way. I control. And when that knight landed on the D4 square, what square is that called?
Peace.
Sweet center. So I developed my knight into the sweet center, and it came with devastating effect. So what I was trying to do was to develop my army, control the center, king safety, and I was always conscious of how many spaces I was winning and what the material was. And every chess game, every grandmaster in the world does exactly what we did just now.